Tell us about the language barrier between you and Sergio Leone when you first got there.
I got off in Rome. I had I brought few pieces of wardrobe with me, and I hadn't met anybody. And then I met, and I didn't speak Italian at all, and Sergio didn't speak any English at all. So our first meeting was a lot of hand signals, you know, and that kind of thing. And then we had a lot of laughs. We did everything through an interpreter, Elena Dressler, and she was terrific. But eventually, I learned a few things, and he learned a few things, and eventually we had a reasonably compatible time. So it was a great time there, and I did do a small segment film with Vittorio De Sica, and who it was a great pleasure to work with. But it wasn't a great film for him or a great film for me. It was a 20-minute segment film featuring Silvana Mangano, and that was about my experience in Italy. But I've enjoyed it. I always felt very nostalgic because it's the beginning of my career. It was kicked it off, and Sergio, it was one of those, a really nice relationship. I'm sure he got annoyed with me, and I'm sure I got annoyed with him. But in hindsight, I'm sure we'd all still be friends.
You got to go to countries that were co-producing these movies, and you'd never been there before.
Yeah, actually it was an Italian film company. They'd asked me if I would go over to Italy and do a Western film with a director who I had never heard of at the time, and I was doing this Western television series in the States, and I didn't feel like I really wanted to do that, but I did recognize the material when I read it as being Yojimbo, which was a favorite samurai film of mine by Akira Kurosawa, and so it was very, very inviting. I figured that it wasn't a very expensive production. It was a co-production of 3 different nations. It was a great experience, a new experience for me, and working with new people. And Sergio turned out to be a very simpatico individual, very funny, and a terrific director. And those were great moments for me.
Tell us what some of the differences were as a man in your young 30s. Coming from the United States and going to Italy. What were some of the cultural differences that you got to experience that we don't?
Well, it was different working in other languages in the films because these co-productions, they had to hire so many actors from different societies, and they'd have to hire so many German actors because they were co-producer, so many Spanish actors because they were co-producer, and so we found ourselves, all of us found ourselves together in Almeria, Spain, and at that particular time, Almeria was very, very isolated. They didn't have any airports or anything like that, and the only way down there was a 9.5-hour drive from Madrid. So it was over all 2-lane roads, no freeways, and it was interesting though. And I was in a town where nobody spoke English except Mariana Koch, who was the German actress who was in the film, and she was terrific. All the cast was terrific, but eventually you learn Spanish very fast. You learn some Italian. You learn even a few words of German, and then you get and you sort of make out. But it was different. It was different, but it was fun. It was very life expanding, if I may put it that way.
So you came back to America with not only a hotter career, but you also came back with a much hotter car, didn't you?
I bought a Ferrari, and I got it back and had it shipped to New York. I was going to drive it around. I was going to drive it through Europe, but then I figured I better get it home, so I shipped it to New York, and I drove it across the country.
You find great satisfaction in making biographies, and it looks like you're doing more and more of those as your career progresses and gets hotter?
Well, I always enjoy biographies because it always tells you something about the people you've read about throughout the years, and in some cases, and sometimes people that have never had any particular promotion. For instance, in Changeling, I knew nothing about that story. It was just taken out of police records from the 20s, early 30s in Los Angeles, California, and then also in Invictus, we were talking about rugby and rugby's influence on reconciliation in Africa after the apartheid was done, and so it was kind of an interesting time, interesting learning experience for me. I always figure the fun part about making pictures is you're always learning something new all the time, either about yourself or about somebody else or what have you. But in biofilms, especially, you're learning something historical, and I've enjoyed very much doing those films. My new film that I'm going to commence almost immediately, fairly soon, we're preparing on now, is a film called Hoover, and it's on J. Edgar Hoover, who was the most powerful man in America at that time, and one of the most powerful men ever, really. Not necessarily in rank, but in just the knowledge he had about everything that was going on, and it's a fascinating story.
Are your movies partly autobiographical? Do you see yourself in a lot of the characters?
No, I don't see myself in a lot of the characters. I don't think of myself in terms of myself. I think of myself in watching myself on the screen as characters portrayed. But I suppose there's a little bit there's a little bit of all of them in you, and maybe a lot of none of you. So it's really a strange dichotomy. I've been compared only because I sometimes am slow talking Jones, but I've been compared to Gary Cooper and Henry Fonda, but I'm just. I mean, they were wonderful characters, and I loved watching them in films. But I don't feel like I was influenced by them in any particular way. I feel like I was influenced more as a kid by Jimmy Cagney and Humphrey Bogart, maybe, as people I liked a lot.
What is more fulfilling about doing a biography versus doing a movie that has maybe special effects or an action film?
Well, I think it's always fun to do films with stories. I know right now, especially in Los Angeles, Hollywood area, everybody gets misty-eyed about doing big fictional films, a lot of CGI, computer graphics, and what have you. But I still love stories about people, even fictional people, and the problems they have to overcome, and the basics of drama really is, of conflict and solving conflict, overcoming conflict. These are all things that I personally enjoy making. Not that there's anything wrong with the other kind. It's just that for me, I'd rather do those. So, but the bioflick thing is very appealing to me.
Your advice to young filmmakers would be what? If you could say, my advice to you young or you up-and-coming filmmakers is, who are starting off doing biographical work.
Well, my advice is to keep going and be dogmatic in your pursuit of what you want to do. It's a great profession. It's a lot of fun, but it's very difficult in the sense that you're at the mercy of what people might want or what they don't want, or you're at the mercy of people who are prejudging what people might want, and half the time they don't know what anybody wants. So we're all just guessing, and I'm just guessing. When I do a film, I'm just making a film. I'm not thinking about whether anybody ever wants to see it or not. Once in a while that crosses your mind, but immediately you put that out because you got to figure you can't be worried about that. That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to do the best job you can, and then hopefully somebody comes and wants to embrace that.
You've received the Lancia Celebration of Lives Award
I have.
2010.
I have.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. I'd like to thank Director Romeo and Tutto Italia for this Lancia Celebration of Lives Award. It's a great honor for me, and I'm making a biofilm next year, so look out, I may just be coming your way.